I wanted to thank you too for including me and having me on your show today.
Oh, it's
I
my
do know
pleasure.
it's a lot of work that goes on behind the scenes of putting on, a podcast, a show, or whatnot. And I really just want to thank you guys for inviting me to hang out with you guys today.
No,
Okay.
Oh,
thanks
we're
for
excited
coming,
to have
man.
you here. Yeah, no, this
All
is
We
right.
had
great.
we had to go through your security, man. It was tough to get to you,
We
but
did some digging.
we had to do some digging. What's up, everybody? Johnston Jennings here
And Liliana Fidua.
with episode number 5.
5. We're on number 5.
Oh my God.
It's going so quick.
It's moving too fast. But today we have somebody special as usual. This Luminary is incredible, very insightful, and I'm sure you guys are going to learn a lot from him. Without further ado, Mr. Alonzo Williams.
And before we get started, make sure you guys follow us on all social media platforms at Luminary Panel. We would love if you like, comment, and share this video if you can. And make sure you subscribe to our channel so you don't miss a beat as we continuously grow.
Let's go. Here we go.
We're excited. Hello.
Oh, there he is.
Hi.
So how are
There he
the
is.
beautiful people today?
We are
Doing
great.
well.
We're very
Doing well.
excited.
Looking good, man. Beautiful smile, man. Gotta
Well,
show
you
the
guys are
teeth.
bright-eyed. You guys are bright-eyed and bushy-tailed today.
Yes, sir. We're
We
excited
always
to have
are. We're
you.
ready.
So just tell us a little bit more about your business and who you are and what is Synergy.
Okay. So, I'm Alonzo Williams, and I was an Army brat for a bit. But both my parents were from Jacksonville. Mom and dad were divorced when I was young, and my dad moved down to Miami, where I had other family members as well. So I kind of split time between both Jacksonville and Miami. Graduated from high school in Jacksonville and ended up at the University of Florida. So, Chelsea, you heard this. If you cut me, I bleed orange and blue.
I know, man.
And I'm doing a lot of bleeding right now, so I'm a through and through a diehard Gator.
Yeah.
I've been in Orlando since 1993, so I've been here for a while.
Oh, wow.
Worked in corporate America for about 11 and a half years, and we started our company, me and 3 other partners. In 2005, we started a company called Xerion. Xerion Group is what it was called, and it was my second opportunity at entrepreneurship, and it was truly God sent because of the way it happened, the way it came about, the quickness that it had to start. It was truly a launching pad for a lot of careers, and that began the journey to this whole world of entrepreneurship since 2005 for me.
Oh, wow.
Awesome.
That's really cool. And it's actually crazy because my younger 2 sisters actually just went off to the University of Florida. So they're in that same kind of space. They're so excited to be there. And I'm actually not originally, but I moved to Jacksonville and I was there for 8 years between 2nd and 9th grade. So I was there for a bit of time as well. I really loved it there, Jacksonville Beach and Ponte Vedra and everything like that. So definitely a great space to be in. So kind of going off of your background and everything too, can you tell me a little bit about throughout your career, who has been your biggest supporter?
This is interesting. First off, I apologize. I wanted to thank you too for including me and having me on your show today.
Oh,
I
it's my
do
pleasure.
know it's a lot of work that goes on behind the scenes of putting on, a podcast, a show, or whatnot. And I really just want to thank you guys for inviting me to hang out with you guys today.
No,
Okay.
Oh,
thanks
we're
for
excited
coming,
to
man.
have you here. Yeah, no, this is great.
We had to go through your security, man. It was tough to get to you,
We
but
did some digging.
we had to do some digging.
What's funny, I would have to say my biggest supporting cast is my mom. It's kind of weird because it's funny. Your wife will be your biggest cheerleader. But if it doesn't work, she's going to hold you accountable,
Right.
if the venture doesn't work. Not my mom. I could have told my mom I was going to the moon, and she'd have tried to introduce me to Elon Musk. it's just somebody who was always there, that's in your corner. It's always telling you, you can do, you can do, you can do, you can do, even when you don't think you can do, you know.
Mhm.
And she was the first person in my life who told me that, you know. She told me, Alonzo, you're going to college,
Mhm.
even when I had no earthly idea what that looked like or what that meant. So I think she's the person who struck the match more than anything else. There's been a whole lot of other people in my life that, you know, have been mentors, that have been support, safe spaces, people I could talk to. There's been a whole bunch of those folks, but she's the one who struck the match.
That's
Wow,
awesome,
that's
man.
incredible.
So, although you had her as a supporter, did you have any mentors or people that you looked up to in the meantime that kind of
Oh, definitely.
jump start
Yeah,
that?
definitely. Chilson, I tell you, you know, there were four guys in my life. Tom, Tom, Jerry, and Jack. And
Not the
I'll let
cartoons, man. I ain't talking about. I'm talking about real people.
yeah. So, you know, Tom Mock, Tom taught me how to work in corporate America. You know, he was my first boss. You know, there's some guys who just take you kind of under their wing, you know, and show you the ropes. Because you know, man, I'm this young black kid coming out of school.
Mhm.
You know, my mom was in, you know, a mid-level executive at Blue Cross and Blue Shield in Jacksonville, but it's not like I went to work with my mom, you
Mhm.
know, and I didn't know what was expected of me when I got to the job, so on and so forth. And Tom, you know, he was my boss, but he took me under his wing and
Right.
he showed me the ropes of corporate America, and I'll never forget that. And he made working in his department a really cool place to be.
Mhm.
Um, you know, once I realized that the accounting world wasn't where I wanted to be, I wanted to be in IT.
Mhm.
I moved over to the IT department, and a gentleman named Jerry Fallon. Um, Jerry Jerry was the mentor who gave me vision. You know, when you hang around people with vision, you start to see things a little different. And he was a, you know, an Annapolis grad from way back in the day. He flew F4 fighter jets and all that kind of stuff. And he had worked at much larger IT shops. So he helped cast a vision for a lot of us in our environment to help us think outside the box. And he was the first guy that ever kind of forced me to do that. He
I
would
know
ask
that was
these crazy,
uncomfortable.
yeah, he would ask these crazy questions because they were like brain teasers, and you're like, whoa. And he's like, you got to open up, you got to think different than you're thinking. Just because we work for this company doesn't mean the way we're doing it right now is the way we're supposed to do it.
Right.
There's other people who do it much better ways, and we got to think like that.
Right.
Um, and then his replacement was a guy named Tom Ward.
Mhm.
Tom gave me the gift of organization. You
Mhm.
know, Tom was a integral reason why Hughes Supply was able to sell the Home Depot for $3.5 billion.
Wow.
A
Wow,
guy
that's
named Tom Morgan came in, and you know, and he was the new CEO when he took us to that spot. But Tom Ward's organizational skills inside of our IT department allowed us to leverage all of the growth that we had inside of Hughes and get it on one ship, sailing on one information system. I mean, we implemented 450 branches on the one system
Mhm.
when we had 48 different systems at one time because of acquisition.
Mhm.
And it was his organizational skills that literally let that happen. And so I learned that from him. And then Jack Whitlam, you know, Jack was one of those companies that had gotten acquired by Hughes.
Mhm.
And so Jack was an entrepreneur at heart. And Jack taught me gave me the gift of entrepreneurship. You know, it's kind of funny, and sometimes talking about money is kind of taboo, but you know, when we started our company, you know, Jack asked each one of us, you know, okay, guys, what do you want to see this company do? You know, what's your vision?
Mhm.
And we all gave around and gave some, you know, squirrely answers or whatnot. And then I asked him, I said, so what's your purpose of doing this? And he said, to teach you how to be millionaires. And I
Wow.
was like, whoa,
That's
that's a good
impactful.
one.
well,
Somebody to have in your
sign me up for that one, you know.
Mhm.
pocket.
But it was those four guys who poured into me, and they kind of took me under their wings, and I'll never forget that. So, you know, I'll always preach, you know, you got to have folks that are in your life who are willing to pour into you and give back.
Yeah, that's really impactful. I didn't. It's so important because nowadays people don't understand how important it is to have mentors or people that's done it at a high level and you can learn from them or at least take some pieces and nicks and knacks and tactics and strategies to build yourself in your own way. So I remember we met at Dwayne Kent's Lunch and Learn. We actually interviewed him yesterday, which was incredible. It was a
Uh-huh.
good
Yes.
interview. But you was telling your story about how you were against the odds in your company at the time, and you were faced with a decision to either stay there or create your own business, right? So, what was the driving force to make you make that decision, and what made you feel that it was the right decision?
Justin, once you've started a company, it's really hard to sit back
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
and do nothing all day,
Right.
like retiring. You can only play so much golf. And I tried. uh, so the decision wasn't really hard for me. I just needed to make sure that, what I was tuned into, I just needed to make sure I was tuned into who I wanted to serve.
Mm,
Um,
that's deep.
I needed to make sure that, what I was embarking upon would get my focus at the same time giving me energy. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. That's deep right there.
Yeah, that's awesome. So then, kind of in that same realm, can you give some tips to somebody who may be in the same field or just trying to enter this business, how they can kind of try and find their passion?
So I tell you, passion's a funny thing. I think the first thing I would say is you really do need to find out who you want to serve.
Can
I
you
don't
help
know
people
if you
understand
know,
what you mean by that?
yeah, I don't know if you guys know who the stand-up comedian is. His name is Michael Jr. That's who he goes by.
Mm,
Um, he does a lot of speaking in faith venues. And I heard somebody ask him this a while ago, and it really resonated with me. He said, the person asked, so when trying to find your passion, ask yourself, who do I want to serve?
mhm.
So if kids are your passion, you want to do something with the youth, you can become a coach, and you're gonna be serving the folks that you want to serve. You might be doing the thing that you're gifted at, that you love, and then all of a sudden, when you're serving the right people with the thing that God's already gifted you with, you become Deion Sanders.
Yep.
People act as if Deion's been coaching for 20 minutes. He's been coaching for 20 years.
Exactly.
You might end up becoming a math tutor because you
Mhm.
want to serve kids, but you've got the gift of being able to understand calculus or algebra 2 or whatever it is. Heck, you might have the gift of business and you can deal with the loud noises. You might open up a Chuck E. Cheese because you want to serve kids.
Right.
If you want to serve adults, you might open up an adult daycare or an assisted living facility. If you want to serve athletes, you go to law school and become an agent. you
Right.
know
Mhm.
so I think we're all called to a purpose, and I think passion is really born out of Psalms 37:4. Delight yourself in the Lord and he'll give you the desires of your heart.
Mhm.
um so I you know the passion component, man. I really do believe that's that thing that gets you up in the morning.
Mhm.
I think you really, really, really got to figure out, hopefully with the Lord's help, who are you inclined to serve?
Mhm.
And for me, I wanted to serve business owners. I really do, because, how I know it affected me and I wanted to give back to them.
That's a great answer, man.
That's literally incredible. I feel like you've had such an accomplished career already, just from the different kind of pieces you've been part of and owning your own. Kind of within all of that, too, what has been your biggest struggle in your career so far, and how have you overcome it, or are you continuing to overcome it?
Well, the biggest struggle in my career, and Justin heard this probably a couple weeks ago, was the first stab at entrepreneurship.
Mhm.
And I am walking on cloud nine because we are about to do well.
Mhm.
And we got swindled out of all of our cash because, we weren't watching the cookie jar.
Yeah.
And you know, it hit me hard because it's like, well, man, I'm passionate about doing this thing. I'm ready to do it. And all of our runway just got snatched from us because now we don't have any capital to make this thing happen.
Yeah.
And that was a struggle. And truth be told, I always had this desire to get back into entrepreneurship, but that thing hit me so hard. I think it cost me 11 years. Yeah, I had 11 good years inside of corporate America, and God designed, not necessarily designed, but God, helped me walk through that path and gave me great mentors in the process. So I'm not questioning providence at all. And maybe that's what I needed to happen, but that was a struggle. It was a hurdle for me to mentally get over before I started the next one.
Yeah, that's a great point to make, because I know it took a haul on your team, and they stuck around. They believed in the passion, the vision, the story that you had, the mission that you had to align. So tell us about how you created a culture of winning with your team.
Guys, I really believe that culture begins and ends with core values of the leader.
Mm-hmm.
That's huge.
Because I think these become the building blocks of the organization that you're setting out to create.
Mm-hmm.
Many times the values are not known by the staff, or there might not even be any values at all that the company's built upon.
Mm-hmm.
I believe you should retain your staff based on your core values. I think you should interact with your customers and your suppliers based on them as well. Inside of my organization, we've got 5:
Mm-hmm.
kingdom over brand, do the right thing,
Yeah.
pursue excellence, chase the client's mission, and a no jerk policy.
Yep.
Love that.
And, so when it'll come time to, give quarterly, monthly, quarterly or biannual or annual reviews or whatnot, those values will be on there, and there will be a scoring mechanism based on those values. And if you're meeting those values, then life is good.
Right.
If you're exceeding those values, life is great. If you don't meet one of the values, you don't really need to be on the team. And that's how, anal you need to be about your core values, because it's who you are and it's what the company's about. The last thing you want is somebody who doesn't meet one of the values still inside the company, because then it becomes a cancer to everybody else.
Yeah, because I was actually going to get into that. Like, how do you handle people that's in your company that may start out with all 5 of the core values, but once time comes along, they start getting comfortable. They start seeing how nice of a leader you are, or the managers that's running their specific area. They're seeing how lenient they are, and they start to kind of go away from those core values. What does a conversation sound like, or what is it? How do you orchestrate that type of discipline?
Chosen, I believe that starts at the interview. So, you're sitting down with John Smith and you're going through your interview process. And if you're going to bring him on the team, I don't think it starts at onboarding. I think it starts at, hey, this is who we are. This is our mission. This is our vision. This is what we believe differentiates us from the competition. But these are our core values. This is who we are, and this is who we will always be. If you meet these core values, life is going to be great inside the organization because everybody else is going to. If you don't meet these core values, it's not that big of a deal. You just don't want to be here. And so I have always been under the mindset that you don't fire people. People decide to leave. The worst thing you can do is to have somebody quit and stay. So if you quit on the values, you can't stay here. Because then it becomes a problem for everybody else to have to deal with.
Right. A lot of people are, so as far as leaders, they kind of tarnish their own brand based off of being too nice and not being anal, like you said earlier, about their core values. Or some people don't understand how to create their core values or know what their values are for them to be able to establish a presence like that. So how did you figure out a way to be like, okay, these are my principles, these are my values, and I want to
I
live
think
by it? What made you get into that?
I think some of that is maturity.
Mhm.
Um, you know, I think some of that is what you're going to tolerate, what you're not going to tolerate.
Mhm.
Um, you know, I was at a networking event and I had like a breakout session, and we were talking. This was pre-COVID,
Mhm.
uh, and we were talking about, you know, stress testing. I had done a mastermind group based on stress testing your business,
Mhm.
and because I was in IT, we had to always do disaster recovery plans.
Mhm.
And excuse me, and what would happen if your server went out? How quickly could your company recover? What would happen if your number one supplier went out of business? How would you handle that?
Mhm.
So we talked about those disaster recovery and business continuity things. And then all of a sudden I introduced another topic. And that was, what would you do if your best salesperson, the one who's responsible for 60% of your sales, decided to leave?
Mhm.
And I had a lot of CEOs looking at their shoes. And it was like, well, oh, we'd have a problem.
Mhm.
And okay, so we need to understand how to build your company out that you don't have those problems, you know? And it's the same thing here. If you've got one person on your team that is so influential with the other members of your team, if they decide they don't want to live by a core value, then what does that do to the rest of the team?
Mhm.
Some of that takes us some maturity of the owner slash leader, but if you don't do it, then you're held hostage to
Mhm.
somebody in your company, and that just can't happen.
That's interesting. So because you kind of tapped into the networking space, how can you tell our audience and our watchers how important it is to have a skill like networking be one of your forefronts of creating a personal brand for people to trust you and trust your business?
You know, one of the reasons that I think a lot of people don't start companies is because they don't want to do this necessary evil called selling.
Mm.
Because we have been given the image of a salesperson that has been so, for lack of better terms, jacked up over the course of time
Mhm.
that people don't want to be associated with the quote unquote sleazy car salesperson. You know what I mean?
Right. Yeah.
You know, for some of your older viewers in this audience, there was a TV show a long time ago called WKRP in Cincinnati.
Mm.
And the sales guy's name was Herb Tarlick.
Mhm.
And he was the prototypical sales guy. Walked in with a plaid jacket and he was selling everything. And he's selling water to you at the water machine. And he was the sleazy sales guy.
Yeah.
And that's been buried in people's mind for a long time. And so when it comes to networking, that's what you're doing.
Mhm.
You are selling, but you have to understand what you're selling when you're at a networking event.
Mhm.
May he rest in peace. There was a gentleman named Steve Placey who did a lot of podcasting and whatnot. He was over in the Melbourne area.
He sounds familiar.
Yeah, I went to an event Steve was speaking at. This had to be 10 years ago. And we were at this networking event. It was over at Stony Brook Golf Course.
Mhm.
And there had to be 100 people in the room. And people are just, talking and networking and it was just pleasant vibe in the room. And he stops everybody as he's getting ready to start his program. And he asked 2 questions. He said, how many people are here to sell something? And about 95% of the room raised their hand.
Mm.
And then he said, how many people are here to buy something? And nobody raised their hand.
Wow.
And it was the first time I was like, whoa, wait a minute. He said, so everybody's here today handing out business cards to people who don't want them.
Wow. That's crazy to think about.
Yeah, and so he went a little further and he made a comment. He said, so we need to think about networking different. He says, so I'm going to put a couple of questions on the table for networking purposes. And one of the questions was, where did you go to high school? Something like that. And the next question was, what's your favorite dessert? Just 2 random things. And the decibel level in the room increased 3 or 4x. Because somebody said they went to a high school in Wisconsin and somebody else went to their rival high school and they happened to be sitting at the same table. Wow. And all of a sudden I got something in common with you. Mm-hmm. And now we can talk about things a little deeper because we've got commonality. Mm-hmm. And I'm watching this and I'm like, wow, this is absolutely amazing. So when I go to a networking event, I go with basically a purpose. And the purpose is I want to meet 3 people that I didn't know today. And if I'm doing a speaking engagement, I want to leave with another speaking engagement. Mm-hmm. So I went and spoke at Dwayne's thing, and guess what? I'm speaking at your thing.
Yes, sir.
You see what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. So if I go networking with a plan, I want to meet 3 people I don't know, and I want to get something out of it, then it's worth me getting in the car and driving to the event or spending the $2 or $3 on a drink at the event or whatever it is. But I think most people believe I got to be selling something. And 9 times out of 10, you're never going to sell anything at a networking event. Yeah. What you're going to do is you're going to make a relationship or 2 that might lead to selling something 6 months from now. But if you do it enough and you do the right events, sooner or later they start stacking up. And 6 months later, you start seeing the goal from that.
Yeah.
Wow.
Go ahead. Sorry.
Yeah, no, you're good. So kind of going back to the interviewing space you were talking about before, having the perfect fit on your end, what would you give our viewers that I know a lot of them, are going through the interviewing process, trying to find that perfect fit in a company? What advice would you give to them kind of going through that process and trying to find on their end that perfect fit as well?
Whenever I had to do interviews, I hated them. And I hated them. I'm on Indeed looking for people. I'm on ZipRecruiter looking for people. I call a couple of services to send me people. I hated doing interviews. I really did. They were necessary evils, but I just hated doing them. Mm-hmm. And what I found, this is me as a boss at the time, an employer, I just wanted to have a conversation with people. And I wanted to find out from me, did you fit our organization? And you should be trying to find out if you fit the organization.
Right.
Because there's nothing worse than working for a company you don't want to be at. There's nothing worse than that. And I think too many times people look at the benefits, they look at the salary, they look at the location they're going to be in, and they don't really strategically try to get a job that's going to get them to where they want to be. Mm-hmm. But it starts with you knowing what your purpose and where you want to be is. Mm-hmm. If you want to get into the IT space, you should be trying to figure out what part of IT. I was in the IT space for literally 20 years, and I didn't code anything. I was on the business end of IT, and that's where I wanted to be. And every single thing I did was surrounded around the business of information technology, not necessarily coding, not databases, none of that stuff. I had to understand it, but I wasn't doing it. I was helping people get to the next level in their organizations by implementing those things. So I think you really do need to strategically decide what do you want to do? Where do you want to live? What kind of lifestyle do you want to live? And I think that's another thing too. I don't think a lot of us have what I call a lifestyle budget, where you can say, if I live in a $350,000 house, what type of job do I need to make that happen?
Right.
But if I want to live in a $650,000 house, guess what? I need a different type of job. And I think when you decide what kind of lifestyle you want, I think that also helps you too.
So, with all the knowledge that you've gained over the years in your career, what are some things that you may have done differently that could help our listeners?
Oh, what could I have done differently? Well, I tell you, if you've started a company, make sure you go into it with a mindset that you're building it to sell it. Let me kind of explain what that means. So in 2010, I have purchased my division from my partners. And from 2010 to 2019, I'm running my business, so on and so forth. And I'm looking at my P&L, and I'm pretty satisfied with what I've done so far. And this is pre-COVID. And I get 2 offers on my company.
Wow.
I am really discouraged, like really discouraged, because I'm saying to myself, I'm killing myself, and this is what my company's worth. And Liliana, I'll say this to you because one day you'll probably be a mom, but you look at your baby and your baby's beautiful, but everybody doesn't think your baby's beautiful.
Okay.
And so you're building this company, and you, man, you got your chest stuck out, and, and it's, but everybody didn't look at your company like that. So I went to a group who helped me understand how to structure a business to sell it, whether you sell it or not. And when I did sell it 2 years later, it was 4x what the original offers were.
Wow.
Congratulations. That's amazing.
And so, as happy as I was to do it, I say to myself, well, man, if I had been building it like this all those other 9 years, where would it have been? It might have been 8x. It might have been 12x the offering, So there's some things that you go through to build your company in a methodology that says, I feel good about my P&L statement. But somebody who wants to buy your company doesn't care how much it makes for you. They only care how much it's going to make for them.
Yeah.
And so the way you structure the organization leads to that, and you get much better multiples if you decide to sell it. So the approach to how I built the business is definitely what I would have done different.
Wow. So what would you have done then in that space with all the people who you said, may not love your business and were kind of getting in your head at different points? What have you done throughout your career to be able to block those different voices out?
So what I would say is this. You need to make sure that the people who are in your life, hang around people who speak life into you.
I love that.
Because there are going to be a ton of naysayers. Oh, you can't do this. Oh, you can't do that. Oh, you can't do this. Oh, you can't do. And sooner or later, that becomes draining. Because, number one, find a mentor. Because the mentor is going to give you very good guidance on the potholes of entrepreneurial life. And they're going to happen, and you're not going to avoid them all. You're just not. And through that process, when you hit a pothole, you're able to double back in your mind, circle back in your mind and say, okay, I was warned that something like this might happen. And when you're able to sit down with somebody who's a mentor for you, you got to let go of your ego. You got to let it go, because what the mentors are going to help you understand is I might have sold my business for $1 million. I might have sold it for 5 million, 10 million, or whatever it is. But you know what? Rome wasn't built in a day, and I didn't know all this stuff when I started.
Mm-hmm.
Entrepreneurs over time figure it out. That's what makes us kind of crazy. Who in the world would work 80 hours a week for themselves because they don't want to work 40 hours for somebody else? It's kind of crazy when you think about it, right? But at the end of the day, entrepreneurs figure it out. And you're only going to do that when you're around people who speak life into you. Hey, man, you can do it. You can do it. You can do it. You got to hear that stuff. You got to hear that over the course of time, or you'll get lost in this malaise of, I can't figure it out. It's not guaranteed to success. I can go get a safe job. That's not who we are.
Yeah.
We don't play it.
Yeah, as entrepreneurs, man, it's extremely difficult to be around people that aren't as open-minded to the idea, because a lot of times, because they're not open-minded, they become small-minded to the idea that made me too big for them to comprehend. So, for example, I always talk to my team like, we're going to be on TV. We're about to start a Netflix series soon. Like, we're thinking big, but they think like, this dude is crazy. We haven't even started posting one episode yet. But I think for us, I think you can attest to this. The bigger the dream, the closer you'll get to the first step.
Truth be told, Johnston, here's what I believe. If your dream isn't big enough to scare the crap out of people, it's not big enough.
It ain't big enough.
There you go. Yeah.
It's not big enough. Because at the end of the day, if you've got this vision of, wow, we could do this, we could do this, we could do this, we could do this, and the folks behind you are like, what are you looking at? You've got to be able to passionately transfer that vision to them. And if you can, you might not be good at building a business plan. You might not be good at creating a great marketing plan. You might not be good at hiring people. You might not even have enough money. You can get people to do all that stuff. You can have people come into your life to do all that stuff. But if you can't transfer the vision, then it ain't going to happen.
Right. And that's funny that you keep mentioning that, because even in our last interview with Dwayne, I always mention this movie, and it transformed my view on leadership. It transformed my view on communicating well and how to get things done in a certain way because the standard is set if I articulate it the right way. The movie Jobs, the memoir about Steve Jobs, the Apple creator, he articulated everything so perfectly, it made me want to work for him. It was you know what I mean?
I tell you, he understood probably better than anybody that you don't hire smart people to tell them what to do. You hire smart people so they can tell you what to do.
That's great.
You don't bridle people. You give people wings and you don't clip them. There's a few people who think they're crazy enough to change the world, and they usually do. He understood all that stuff. And Microsoft might have had better programmers. IBM might have had better technology. They might have had all those other things, but what they didn't have was somebody crazy enough like Steve Jobs to say, let's go change the world.
Right.
And I tell you, this group of young folks today, I'm a Gen Xer, and we wanted what our parents had. Our parents had a nice house. We wanted a nice house. Our parents were driving a BMW. We wanted a BMW. And we were willing to put in the blood, the sweat, and the tears to get what our parents had. It was how we were raised, and it was what we were. The millennial generation gets a lot of angst from us,
Mm-hmm.
just like we got from the boomers.
Mm-hmm.
And because the millennials are the first generations of kids that have ever been planned for.
Mm-hmm.
Think about that.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
The first that's ever been planned for. Prepaid college, figured out where your daycare was going to be before you were born, all that stuff. Parents have, the whole lawnmower parent, the helicopter parent, that stuff never existed with us.
Mm-hmm.
And so with this generation, they either want to do two things. They either want to be entitled or they want to change the world.
Mm-hmm.
There's no in between.
Yeah.
And so you have to figure out who wants to be entitled and who wants to change the world. And you want the world changes on your team.
Right.
But you also know they're not old enough to know everything yet. So you got to be able to shepherd and move along. And that's where and that's where the leader, that's the role you got to play. You got to be able to cast that vision. You got to passionately transfer that vision to the team. And when you do, you keep hammering that drum over and over and over and over again. And you surround it with the core values, and then you can get from point A to point B to point C, probably faster than you think.
Right.
It took, John Kennedy to make a statement, by the end of the decade, we should have a man on the moon.
Mm-hmm.
He gave everybody a vision. And in 10 years, scratch that, in about 9 years, we were landing on the moon.
Right.
Something somebody would have thought was completely impossible. Elon Musk said, hey, I want to be able to reuse a rocket. What? You're crazy.
Mm-hmm.
Well, we're reusing rockets. So it's those folks with that kind of vision who see where you can go, that normally get there.
Yeah. Last question before we wrap it up. I know, my bad, Liliana, but
No, you're good. You're good.
sorry.
And guys, I got some extra time. That's up to you guys. Okay.
Okay, cool. So I'll ask this last question, then you can ask yours, and then we'll close it.
Okay.
So with that being said, because a lot of people don't understand how important it is to go with their instinct and tap into who they are innately. For the people that are naturally leaders, but don't necessarily, they're naturally leaders, but they're introverts, or they're not comfortable with stepping out of their comfort zone to be like, okay, this is not right. This is what you should be doing. This is something that I agree with. This is something that I don't agree with. What would be your advice to those people that are trying to get out of that comfort zone, and what steps or strategic things they could do to kind of make it easier for them to start walking in that realm?
I tell you, Johnson, I think you ask 10 people this question, I think you'll get 11 answers.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So I would come at it a little bit different.
Mm-hmm.
In my life of where I've been, whether it was, people who participated in activities in high school, whether it was being in your college fraternity, who took leadership roles,
Mm-hmm.
whether it was get inside of corporate America, trying to find out who was trying to move up the ladder, whether it was scrupulous or not, who's willing to step out and start businesses, even in church, who's willing to do volunteer work. You know what I mean? That 80-20 rule holds true. It really does. It really, really does. Some people have made a decision in their life that they're going to go to work and they're going to put left wheels on. And that's what they're going to do today. And tomorrow, they're going to put left wheels on. And 6 years from now, they're going to put left wheels on. And if you ask them to put right wheels on, it is going to be a problem.
Right.
I'm a left wheel putter oner. That's what I do.
Mm-hmm.
And you know what? They put them on better than anybody.
Mm-hmm.
So you get out of the way and you let them put left wheels on, and you do not disrupt the flow.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
You let them do what they're going to do, because guess what? You can depend on them to do that. And they're okay, and they go home and they have their life, and they've got work-life balance in their mind.
Right. Mm-hmm.
you do you. Let me go try to figure out how to build a car.
Mm-hmm.
Because I wouldn't be satisfied putting left wheels on all day.
Mm-hmm.
And it took me a minute to digest that. And I think the older you get, the easier it is to digest. You know, a short anecdote here. We were putting a system into a company up in Jacksonville, I don't know, 10, 12 years ago. And it was a guy named Ernie that worked in the warehouse. And Ernie had worked in the warehouse since he was 19 years old. And Ernie was 60.
Mm-hmm.
The only years that Ernie didn't work in the warehouse was the years that he was off at war.
Wow.
If you've ever been into some industrial type warehouses, they can be some messy places. You could have eaten off the floor in this place.
Wow.
And that's what Ernie did, and Ernie did it better than anybody. Now, Ernie had 20 years of seniority on many people who had been working at a company who were managers, who were Ernie's bosses.
Mm-hmm.
But Ernie was the warehouse manager, and that's what he did. And we knew that when we put this new information system in, if Ernie didn't approve it, we were going to have a problem. And so we had to analyze Ernie, and we had to get Ernie so embedded in our team that Ernie was the one giving out orders for how we were going to put the system in. It wasn't coming from us, it was coming from Ernie. And because Ernie had to go through change. And so we had to change Ernie first before we could change everybody else. The point of the story is, even after they got the new system implemented, Ernie was still in the warehouse. He still he still did what he did. So I think that concept is called a Peter principle. You know, we promote people out of their comfort zone. We promote people out of their ability to do things. So I think we got to be careful about that.
Mm-hmm.
But everybody else who wants to get out of a comfort zone, who feels that they're miserable and they're bored and they're stale and so on and so forth. You know, I had a boss tell me one time, he said, you know, if you're 2.5, 3 years into a job and you haven't moved, you're stale.
Mm-hmm.
I happen to be one of the ones that every 2 years I was trying to figure out something else to do because I just couldn't take it anymore.
Yeah.
So I think it's all about different people and their expectations of what they want out of their career. Some of us want the brass ring, man. And some of us, we just want to be left wheel putter owners. And I think as long as you're okay with who you are, be okay with who you are.
Wow. I've never heard it described in that way, but that makes so much sense because you're right. You know, everyone has a different path and each is beautiful in its own way. But if you are feeling, you know, I want something more, see that vision, I want to go for it, then you should. So to everyone listening, definitely, if you're feeling that, take that step because, you know, there are those rewards out there. It's just a tougher process sometimes too, because it's not always laid out. But kind of on that note of, you know, those world chasers, the dreamers, everything like that, who may be feeling lost because obviously it's a hard process, you know, getting from A to B, which might not be written out completely. What would you tell them when they're feeling like they're hitting that wall? Like what is something or some technique you've used yourself that has helped you get over that hump?
Well, for me, you know, I do believe that you've got to have that, what's the term we use? That North Star.
Mm-hmm.
And for me, that North Star, you know, is Jesus Christ. I can't necessarily say I've always represented him well.
We all don't, man.
You know, he's always had my back. I can't say I've always represented him well.
Mm-hmm.
But, you know, he's always covered me. So I think we need to be grounded. And I think you need to be grounded in kind of what I call like a personal mission statement. You know, so even if you get off track, you've got the directions to get back on the road to the destination, you know. And so I think you need a personal mission statement. Like for me, you know, it was like, you know, glory to God, love my wife, advise my son, shine light in the marketplace and serve my community. So if you've got a personal mission statement, you know why you get up in the morning. And just outside your company, you've got a mission, you know what you're in charge of today. And that vision, you've explained, this vision that you have, and you explained it to your team. So you kind of know where you're going, and hopefully you're all going in the same direction. The hard part is an understanding of knowing, Liliana, things are going to happen. There's this guy named Murphy, and he's got a law. And if it can go wrong, it's going to go wrong sometimes.
Mm-hmm.
And that adversity that you run across, you got to know your team is going to be looking at you. Mm-hmm. And if you're walking around sulking, and it's not going to go well. It's just not. I played baseball, all throughout high school. I thought I was good enough to go out for the Gators, and I found out what talent was that day. But all of your coaches tell you the same thing. Guys, we're going to have adversity in the game, because that other team is on scholarship too. They want to win too. Mm-hmm. And so everything is not going to always go your way. But if you've prepared yourself well enough, if you've thought through the processes well enough, you're probably going to get back on track. Some things you're going to have to make with a gut decision. Colin Powell famously said, you're going to never get more than 70% of the information. The other 30%, you're going to have to make a gut decision. But you got to be willing to make the decision. Mm-hmm. And so it's not going to always go well. It's not going to always go right. But you got to be willing to make the decision. And you got to be willing to stand in front of your team and make a decision with an understanding you might make the wrong decision sometimes. But if everybody's tuned into the core values, you'll be okay.
Wow. Very insightful, man.
Yeah, no, that's incredible, because I feel like you're right. Sometimes people just don't make those decisions because they're too scared to do it. But at some point, you've just got to pull the plug and go for it and hope for the best at that point too. So kind of transitioning out of, this conversation to the end of our podcast, as we always do, our last question is always about what we can do better. So as you know, our mission on this podcast is to serve the people and our listeners. So what are some things that you believe we could improve on the Luminary panel?
Truth be told, guys, there is nothing better than informative content. And what I want to do more than anything else is I want to tell you guys, thank you for including me to help you with that, hopefully. People have individual decisions to do with whatever content they run across, but there's nothing better and there's nothing more informative than good, valuable content. So if you guys keep doing this, you guys are going to be serving a wide audience.
Wow, we love to hear that.
Yeah,
we're on so what? 3 for 3 now, Liliana?
Yeah.
3 for 3.
You're
doing a good job. No, we really appreciate that. And I'm sure we're gonna have you again on another podcast, because I had so many other questions as you were explaining certain things, giving us analogies. But give the people, the audience, where they can find you, your social media, your website for Synergy, all of it.
Yeah. So what we do, just to give your audience an understanding, our whole goal is to help people build valuable businesses. I understand the generational impact of what that can do, how it can affect, your family, not having any debt, being able to make sure that, all your kids can go to school, whether that's private school, whether that's college, doesn't matter. Also being able to teach your kids about finance and teach your kids about entrepreneurism, and letting them understand that it would be really, really cool if I can send my kid off to school to get a good education, to come back and work for the company we've built as a family. Those types of things are things that I believe are generational. So the name of our company is Synergy Group, Synergy, and the website is synergygroup.com, and it's CYNERGE group.com. And one of the ways that we do what we do is we do it through masterminds. So I'm here in Orlando, and I have a monthly mastermind at the Citrus Club called CEO Anonymous. And you have to be a member of the club to come to that one. But I also do another one called CEO Journey. And the goal is to get business owners together in a peer-to-peer setting.
Mhm.
And we sit down and we talk about, sometimes it's a topical discussion, but most of the content is revolving around how to build valuable businesses.
Mhm.
And we do a monthly mastermind there, and we also do a fast track where you can come for 8 straight weeks. And then after that, you make a decision if you want to be a client after that. So ceojourney.net is how you would find me. And once you find me there, you'll have all the other information you need. So ceojourney.net.
And also, don't forget to like, comment, and share this video as well. And you can find more content at the Luminary Panel on Instagram, TikTok, Twitch, Spotify, and YouTube. So make sure you subscribe.
Yes, sir. Well, again, that's a wrap. Thank you for watching the Luminary Panel. Like Liliana said, make sure you follow us on all platforms. We're here to serve. Comment down who you want to see on the podcast. If you know somebody personally, like you think they'll benefit off of this, or they'll be able to impact the masses like we're trying to, or we are doing, please comment down below in all of our platforms. Go.
Hope to see you guys next time.
We're out of here. Peace.
You guys have a great day.